Hi, and welcome to the Feel Good Always podcast. I'm Becky Bradley. This is Real Stories of Love, Connection, and Remembering Who We Are. I'm here with Laura Mirante. Welcome. I'm really
Hi.
glad that you're here. Here on the Feel Good Always podcast, we're talking about moving into higher levels of consciousness. I have Laura here. She has been embodying this work for decades now. She is a channel, a spiritual channel, and I'll read a short bio about her. If you're new here, I want to just let you know a little bit about this podcast, that it was born out of my daughter, Kira Bradley. She was in a fatal UTV accident, and through that, really obliterating of my life through grief, bringing me down to nothing. It expanded me, my connection to her and everything and everyone. And she really has guided me to start this podcast as we're all moving into these higher levels of consciousness that for me just can't be denied. And I believe that everybody finds this podcast. We find each other, whether you're finding me through this podcast or you're finding other people as we're all really moving into these higher levels. And so what I do is I bring people onto the podcast that are also connected to this beautiful energy of moving into higher consciousness. Laura is one of those people. And I'm just really excited about everything that we're going to hear from her today because she has some really beautiful spiritual truth and how we met. And that's the amazing thing is almost everybody that I bring on this podcast is somebody that has an individual connection because since my daughter Kira died, everybody is finding me, which is really amazing. So let me say this about you and then we'll get started. Laura Mirante is an internationally recognized spiritual channel who has spent more than 20 years helping bring forward messages from spirit. Through individual sessions, group channelings, workshops, and teachings, she supports people in releasing fear, discovering their own spiritual truth, and living more fully aligned with their soul's purpose. Laura is also certified in Eden energy medicine and a heart math trainer and a holy fire Karuna Reiki master teacher. At the heart of her work is a deep commitment to helping others remember their spiritual connection while navigating the very human experience of life. How do you feel about that? Does that sound like you?
Yeah.
Yes. So the way that I met you was obviously my daughter Kira had died and I ended up at mom child reunion, which is through Paige Lee. She has these retreats where she connects mothers who have children that have died. She helps us connect to them with all different ways through mediums, through meditation, through the use of oracle cards, through walking in nature, and it's more than that, it's way more than that. But you were one of the people that she brought to the retreat because you're a channel, which means you're able to channel all of our children, and you use a letter board and a pendulum. And that is my first contact with you, which was about a year and a half ago. What you did is you channeled all of these children that have, crossed over for their mothers, their higher selves, their more expansive souls. And I remember taking notes because it wasn't necessarily the words, it was the feeling I had in what you were saying. And I just was writing spiritual truth, spiritual truth. Like if I could just listen to Laura's channelings, I could feel good. Because at the time I was going back and forth by having like little amounts of peace. So I would love you to share channeling, how you even ended up doing this work and a little bit more about you.
Yeah. Thank you. It's kind of cool because you bring up Paige doing the mom child reunion. And she started that actually because she met Sally and Steve. And Sally was the one who taught me how to channel. And Sally had started the parent child reunions in 2009. And she did 3 years, 2009, 10, and 11. And then she passed in 2012.
Yes.
And when she passed, I got the phone call. It's 9:00 in the morning. I'm getting ready to take my child to school. And I get the call that now I had met her, I want to say in 2005. And so now it's 2012. When I met her and learned that we can learn how to channel, I was instantly wanting to do it. I had been sick for 4.5 years. There's a whole backstory of that. But I was in the midst of a change. Everything in my life had been pretty much unplugged. And now I was looking for something different. And as soon as I met her, I was like, this is it. And I started taking all of her classes. And I remember, 7 years of studying with Sally. She was a phenomenal channel, like a really cool, down to earth person who brought in the most profound insights. And sitting with her, I could feel it. I could sit with Sally all day, every day. And, one of the cool things that I want to say to you was that she was so connected, she extended a field. You know what I'm saying? So when we were learning, like I'd have the pendulum and it wouldn't be moving, and she'd walk behind me. She put her hand on my shoulder, and all of a sudden the pendulum would start swinging, and it felt like a flush through me. So I think when you do connect with people who are connected, it opens you up to their connections. So going back to it with Sally, last year, Paige's sixth mom-child reunion, and there was 40 moms there.
Yeah.
And and it was the first time I went in person. And all I could feel was like, Sally's, when she set up her foundation, her goal was to help people accept death as a natural part of life, as a part of the soul's journey, as a step into the continuum. I don't remember exactly how she worded it, but it was literally her purpose for creating the foundation and teaching people to channel. And so having that experience was profound to see the difference in the moms. And I know I could sit with a dozen moms and each personality that comes through me is different. And if I remember correctly with Kira, it was like so much excitement. I think I was physically animated, if I remember right. Like
Yes,
she was
yes.
so, and that happens with the old souls. Like they get so excited to come through. And I could think of, all right, when it's my time, I can't even imagine what I'm going to be like when I find the person that's willing to bring me through. It's exciting. And I've felt Sally's excitement this whole time. But I want to add one thing to that. Two things about doing the work. Learning how to channel, learning how to do mediumship and card readings, tarot readings, and it's all cool, right? But it's all so we could live a life that's aligned, right? So we could live without fear, so we could know our divinity in every situation. Recently, I don't want to say results, but two situations after 20 years of doing this work and working with people, two different situations where I could really see what happens. One of them is a mom, and she knew Sally, and she was with me taking classes way back when, and she had a son. And then in 2021, he passed instantly in a car accident, and we channeled him immediately, and we never stopped. So Nikki was 17 and he passed. Kim woke up at 12:43 a.m., just woke up and looked up. She saw my name, Laura Mirante, in lights above her bed. And the next morning, she found out that was the time he passed. It was such a profound channel. We did it I think within 24 hours.
Wow.
And Kim knew Sally, worked with her, took her classes. Nikki knew Sally. Sally had channeled for Nikki. I had channeled for Nikki. So Nikki was like a really open soul. And so we all had this, I guess, field of belief between Kim, me, and Sally. Right. And so his passing was instant. Her realization was instant. And that's what Sally said was we just created this field of continuity, right, in our belief systems, which created the experience. So now everybody goes through the waves of grief. No matter how much you know what you know, you miss the human. It is what it is. It's just part of being physical. And so we can have that experience. And so this is what working with this work with Kim has gotten to the point where, you'll have a wave and you'll be down for a while and then bring yourself back. Well, recently she gets to the point where the wave comes. She has the realization of the grief. She has the full acceptance that she misses that body, that boy, that personality. And then she takes the breath and she loves him for who he is now. And then all of a sudden, something shifts the grief and something happens. However way he shows up, whether it's two eagles dancing in front of her windows or a book flying off the shelf, the amount of different ways has been phenomenal to watch. And over the course of these few years, it's to the point where she can transmute it almost instantly, right? So then we have the situation where another one of my girlfriends is now helping her husband in his final time of crossing over. So here's the other thing, facing, and I had two of these situations in this 1 year, but facing the love of your life transitioning and holding that space of faith that we're never going to lose contact. I watched it, and I watched the 2 of them. We channeled, early in the process, and he was as open as she was. There was a deep faith in both of them, and, the day of his transition, he had been in and out of consciousness. He woke straight up, looked at her in the face, and said, "Is today the day? Is today the day I get to die?" Lay back, went to sleep, and that evening, she felt his breath shift. She sat there, she laid next to him and just said, "I love you, I love you, I love you." And he floated and she was a part of it, and they never lost the connection. So there was this real awareness of it as she was having the experience. It's one thing to go through the trauma, and I think you called it in one of your videos soul crushing grief. I call it ego crushing grief.
Mhm.
And in the channels that I've done with some of the moms, one I get some visualizations sometimes, and one of them was the shattering of a heart. Okay. So you see the heart shatter, and then all of this light starts coming up in between the pieces, right? And that's the stuff where you would take that and say, I'm going to follow that, right? Where some people would say, no, I'm going to sit here in the feeling of separation. And I want you to know it is a conscious choice. It is a conscious choice that you make every single day to keep continuing to explore what else we can experience, because that's where you are. Talk about pioneering. That's the one thing I did learn. Sally used to do these things with moms, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna work with, like, yoga people and Reiki people and people on the path," right? That was my little human intention. No idea I was gonna be doing this work until before COVID. 2019. So Sally's in spirit from 2012 to 2019, and she is teaching me from spirit, blowing through me. Like, that's the other thing, like, Kira, blowing through your channels because you're let her, right? So for a while, I felt a little bit like a puppet, and because I'm just surrendered. But then you have to remember that you're human and that it does affect your physical when this high frequency comes through you, and we're living in this low frequency reality. There's a dissonance, and you have to adjust, and it takes time to adjust. It takes years, decades. And over the course, you found, and I'm sure already, and you will continue to find, the messages start to get clearer and clearer and clearer, more elaborate, more detailed, more specific. You'll see it. I could see it already in what you're doing. The more you do it, the more it's like clearing out the channel.
Actual channelings, yeah, because you use the letterboard. And if anybody listens to this podcast regularly, every other week I will share Kira's channelings, and that's spelled out letter for letter. And you do that too. Yours is many, many, many more words and sentences and is more clear in that channeled wisdom that is coming through at such a high, high, high vibration. I'm saying it for anybody that's listening. It's just like what we're talking about specifically is spelled out, the pendulum, it connects with the energy of the spirit or whoever you're connecting with, and then coming through us. And I know what you're saying about your body has to get used to it, because when I first started on the board, my hands would be shaking and I would need to go take a nap. But that can also happen, for a lot of people that are listening. It's like we can connect in many ways. This is a way, right? So it can happen when I'm out in the world, all kinds of ways. This energy can come through me through, just for me, it's like a deep knowing about things. The board was another tool that Kira used to directly confirm all of the other synchronicities that were coming. So yes, and of course with practice we get better, but it is like a belief and a feeling of spiritual truth, right?
Mhm.
And you speak of this woman Kim and her son Nikki, and I just think like how divinely orchestrated it is that she was already working with Sally before this happens, which does not mean that you're not in grief, but a different experience, which you described, was that it is a conscious choice. And let me just tell you, as a mother whose child has died, I know, like, I don't want to tell people choose happy, like that's annoying. Um, Everybody has to come to that on their own, right? They have to, especially in this, because it's confusing to be widely open and then to have societal cultural norms. Like no one is really understanding what you're saying, or they're like, oh, that's sweet. You saw a butterfly. Um, and that to just, trust your own knowing, right? And that I was hearing immediately after Kira died, her. in my mind, I heard immediately, I am okay, you are not.
Right.
I am okay. I mean, immediately within minutes, it was like, oh my gosh, because I knew her whole life I worried about her. I was like, it's happening. It was like, and that didn't take away the soul crushing grief, but I could hear her immediately just to reassure me that you have to get through this part. That just a lot of it just didn't make sense. And then that part of kind of looking around at the world I was in, the grieving mothers, which is fathers, nobody wants to be part of this club. Um, and it was very, like, no hope. So I'm in recovery. I've been in, 12 step for a very long time. And part of that is like you go, you show up, and there's hope. Whatever you're going through. Like I always would hear a message of hope. Well, that wasn't, and so I was used to messages of hope. But in child loss, for the most part, what I was experiencing is your life is over, very dismal. And so I was like, "Oh no, I'm not doing this one." And I did have to make a conscious choice to really decide whether or not, and it was Kira guiding me, my higher self, the whole team, guiding me, which eventually leads to channeling and literally a mother whose child who has died. And like my tagline is feel good always, which actually doesn't even tell you what this podcast is about. But Kira's like, it doesn't matter because the message is we can feel good. Even in,
Yeah.
like, I love that you said ego, right? Like it is the ego. It is the ego that thinks that we're separate or thinks that she's mine and I can't believe she was separated. Well, the truth is that you couldn't separate us and you can't really separate anything. It's just that that soul crushing grief and being brought to nothing was what really showed me my connection to everything and everyone, and it was always going to be that way. And which leads me to you, like, which leads us all together. Thank you, Sally Baldwin. She's a
Yes.
piece in my story, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I end up at mom child reunion at 9 months.
Yep.
Now I was already experiencing a wild amount of connection, but the board, well, first of all, the event, I meet people there that I'm supposed to meet. That's always happening. But the board was handed to me while I was there, which is the board that you use. And somebody said, I go to bed every night and I hear that I'm supposed to give this to you. Sure, I put it in my bag of crystals and oracle cards and okay. And that I took it home and that began cure. I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of typed pages where she was spelling out word for word on the board, what was happening in other people's houses and really just proving to me that everything I had experienced to this point was real and true. And she also has continuously told me that I need to just trust that my human body has all this information and less of her 15-year-old personality comes through. And now it's this really expansive soul. So, what I share in the podcast is I'm being guided to share it. It's really just a frequency of activation into this higher wisdom. But I feel less attached to it. Like at the beginning, I was like, I can't believe that I'm directly connecting to her. It's just like I could literally text my kids that died.
Yeah.
What? That's what it felt like. Like this is mind blowing. But it's moved on way farther. That the messages that come through, they're not just Kira. It's really all of. It's this one consciousness of moving into these higher levels of consciousness because that is what happened. Kira died so that she could come through, channel through me so that I could really activate others, like you just said, people coming, Sally walking behind, and the energy of activating others into this frequency with no attachment to who that is just
Right.
finds people. So that's amazing and makes sense. And I feel pretty good. And which brings me back to what you were saying is like watching what it looks like after 20 years, right? But I believe it's speeding up because the amount that I
Mhm.
experienced in a very, very short
Yep.
time of
Yep.
connection. It's not just mediumship. It is like, I can't even put words to it, but hundreds and hundreds of connections. It's like I can see and feel the entire connections of the web of everyone. And it happened very fast. And it continues to evolve.
Yep. You know, one of the things, that you were talking about is how when you're channeling now, the way I feel like when you start with the letters, how I remember doing the letters and then I would hear a word, but, I would make them spell it out. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't trust it for a while. And then once I surrendered and went with the word, then they would start flowing. And I will say the other things that I explored, energy medicine, Reiki, all of it helped move out the stuff that was in the way. So we're all clogged up. We're all clogged up with all of our ideas. And when I say it's the ego aspect of self, it's the intellectually defined ego. It's the ego programmed according to the rights and the wrongs and the cultural beliefs and norms of society that we're raised in, right? So I feel like we have this divine energy and we put it in boxes in our mind. And so you can think of it as like a tunnel. And I don't know why, but I always think of it as like those old coal mines when they collapse in, right?
Right.
And so one letter at a time, we're pulling the big boulders out. You understand? And then a little more light is coming through. And I feel like that's what it was like for those first few years was like, oh, there's not actually just a heaven and a hell. Let me move this boulder. And that boulder took a year, a good year, and still lots of it, fragments of it still challenge the belief system. The stuff that you're programmed with, not only as in your lifetime, but what your parents and your grandparents and how many generations of that is layered on top of your ability to just trust your instinct. It's a lot. It's a lot of cultural programming and that's the intellectually defined ego. It's the one defined by the external society that lives for the external society that will relegate source to money. Like money is the source of my happiness and my security, right? So there's a whole flip when you're going here, there's a lot of having to look at all of that and letting it go. You have to give up some of this for this because you gave up all of this to live in the limits of that, right? So the big stuff that we go through, the ego crushing stuff, it opens it up, right? So it breaks it open. Mind blowing. Isn't that the word you said? Mind blowing,
Yeah,
right?
literally blows your mind so that it can step
Exactly, it blows
aside.
the
Yeah.
limits off of those logical containers that we put everything in. God, life, death, the soul, afterlife. There's so many people's ideas of it blocking the channels, and if you just get rid of the ideas, it can flow. Not that this
Yeah.
one's right, this one's wrong, you just get rid of them.
So I love that you say all that because this is what I tell people all the time on this podcast. You can listen to me and take the pieces that resonate with you because I'm just sharing my experience. And right now it's on the podcast, it's through breath work. I'm not attached. It could change tomorrow, it could come through my writing. It's literally now. Whatever is coming through now, I trust that. And my message is always to find yourself, find yourself in other people's experience, but in your own experience. And like you said, all this programming, this conditioning, Kira here on earth was a child that asked me to question everything.
Of
And
course you
I
did.
kinda did that too. I was kind of like a questioning everything, but the decade leading up to her dying that's when my kind of like life really opened up to doing things differently, and so I was used to kinda not doing what everybody else was doing, and so by the time she dies, all of a sudden Becky's talking about extraterrestrials and New Earth and, channeling, and I'm publicly doing it. Like you said, like the Reiki or I've practiced yoga for years, that it was very clear to me that this message was not meant for just grieving mothers or just like I don't know who it's meant for. All I know is that my ego has stepped aside and I actually don't care what anybody thinks of me because it's so much bigger than me, and my child dying really did move the ego aside. I'm just going to share my frequency and know that this is all a dream, and I know that only love is real, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, we're like you said, we're all in the field, but we are each unique, and we're each like the jigsaw puzzle. We have to be different, right? So everybody is, I wanna say, scattered out into the physical world reality and then finding their way back into the light of the one, right? And so sometimes tarot cards work for people, sometimes mediumship works for people, sometimes pendulum stuff works, sometimes Reiki works. And it's all unique according to what you feel. Like you can be sit two people could be sitting in front of the same thing and one gets pulled to it and one's like, no way. Doesn't mean it's good or bad or right or wrong. That's their unique journey. And it is unique. There's no standard curriculum for this. That's
Yes.
I think that's the key. If you can get that life's gonna be your teacher, then you're always open, you're willing, right, to work with whatever shows up, whether it's grief, anger, fear, or whatever's standing in the way of self-love, right? Self-love is when you love yourself enough to believe yourself. When you love yourself enough to believe yourself, your divinity just comes through because we're all one. So one of the things I wanna say about you as a mom and the reality we're living in, so every institution is man-made. Religion, politics, education, medicine, banking, financial, it has all been perceived, interpreted, and conceived of through the male mind, all to serve the male ego. It really has. Every global system in place right now that defines who we are for us as women. So, the interesting thing about working with moms with kids in spirit is once that ego is shattered, there is nothing left that they're attached to. You understand the fear is gone, that being judged for crazy is often gone, and the only focus is I want to connect with my kid. These signs are coming through. I know it's real. And so they're the ones who are the powerful ones. You are the ones that are strong enough to say, I'm just going to believe it. I don't care if my husband, my father, my religion, my society says it's not real or it's the devil's work. I know it feels like love. I know that that bird out there making me feel this in here is teaching me something about what we all are. Because Kira's not in that little bird out there. I feel her, but she's making that bird flap around to get my attention. The synchronicities that happen, and then you feel the presence. That's the oneness. And we're exploring. Once we make it comfortable with that, like where what you're experiencing becomes the norm, like think about where we'll be able to take humanity when we allow women to show us what we could really be.
Oh,
That's
I
what I
love it. You so much
and
good stuff. Good
there's
stuff.
something about these old souls and because I have thousands of channels, 2 decades of channels, but when I work just with the kids, the stuff they and I know kids could be infants to 35 to 55. You know, I've challenged 55-year-olds for their parents, but the insight that they come through with about why they left, what their purpose was, what their mission was, it's always that, these old souls. It's like, we want to wake the world up. You get to the other side and you're like, oh my God, this is real. So of course we want our loved ones to know. So who's going to be the most open is the mom. You know, some fathers really get there. And it's harder for a man in the societies to hold it. You know, no judgment, different patterns of thinking that they have to deal with, you know, without that, like, feeling that, intuition is it's women's intuition, right? It's women's intuition. So men have oftentimes overrode the feelings they don't want to feel. Now think about that. They're taught not to feel. So the idea of going straight into the grief to get to the other side of it, no freaking way. I'm going to either go out for a drink, I'm going to go, you know what I'm saying? Or I don't want to say it's for all, but there's a lot of resistance to feeling. And that's the key. You gotta walk through the emotion to get to the other side to see what we're really made of.
So I was listening to your channel of Kira from a year and a half ago. Just I haven't listened to it, but I did listen to it this morning, and she was saying that same thing, the feeling. Like we have to feel, which is so interesting because at that point, of course, I had felt to the depths of my own humanity. I say that all the time. That is my main message. Feel good always with the emphasis on feel. And I do breath work now.
Mhm.
I'm leading that in group, and the men that are willing to come, everybody that is willing to come, but for
Yeah.
the most part it has been women that find me in this frequency that are waking up massively. I mean, the amount of people that Kira has connected to specifically is that have never had these experiences in their life. I mean, it's so many people. And that was part of where I was like, wait, something is really going on here because this is people that have never had an experience before. They're now having it. And it was hundreds and hundreds of people that she was like showing up in their thoughts, people
Mhm.
listening to the podcast and being swarmed by ladybugs because it's a frequency. So I literally yesterday or this weekend I did breath work, and a woman that I've never met showed up and was like, Kira sent me here, and this is going to sound really weird to you. Um but she's been connecting with me, and it's kind of scary because it's an intense feeling, and you're never going to believe the things that I'm going to tell you. And I'm just like, oh, honey, I will believe it. And that's what's really amazing is that. So when you said Nikki and her and his mother, Kim, and how she'll have the feeling of grief and then immediately, like, she'll see a sign or a connection or have a feeling. That's exactly what happens to me. It doesn't mean that I don't feel. I can cry, but I simultaneously understand that there is a deep connection, that she's right here, that I
That's
am
it.
not a
Yeah.
victim, that it was like this whole idea that went from Kira's not at prom this weekend with her sister, and I could really fixate on that, you
Yeah.
know? It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that there's not like an underlying grief, but it's like my child, who is an expansive soul way beyond what anything I'm doing here, is literally showing up in people's fields to activate the new earth.
Mhm.
She's a little busy doing other things besides going to prom, and had made it very clear on the board, which was I was knowing that this was a plan. I knew, I was hearing, my whole field was bringing in, like, you guys planned this. I'm like, what? Like, why? Why would we do that? And on the board, she spelled out word for word, like, very matter of factly, like, I'm sorry that you are sad, but, and she wasn't sorry, like, because she didn't have that feeling, but like, we planned this. We are just following the plan. And very matter of fact. And I was like, this is so crazy. And so I believe it. I
Yeah.
know it. I'm like, okay. And sometimes it's very surreal. It's less surreal today.
Yeah.
But we're waking up. And like you said, as we all move into this, it's like I've heard lots of stories, the rapture, the new earth, a flash of light, we're going to be separated, the ones that go into 5D consciousness. I don't know nothing about that, to be honest with you. What I know is what my experience was. I experience my existence here with all of you in a different way, at a very high feel good always vibration. And that's what I believe, is that our experience will shift here so that we question the institutions. And yeah, Kira was making me do that before. And I was doing that, questioning the institutions and really mad about it. That's what's left me, is the anger about it. Especially since Kira died, because I don't have it in me to be
Mm.
angry. I just know it's all unfolding. And like you said, we all have our piece. There are definitely people, I've done my marching, I've done all of that. And people will hear what they're supposed to do. And what I'm supposed to do is this, without being just kind of looking at, oh, it's all unfolding as it should. As the light comes in, the darkness is being revealed. And Kira continues to remind me and all of us, like, stay calm, feel good always. And we are helping. So beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is. And yeah, we are
But
in
we're
that.
human. We're human, like you said. So it's also like, what the heck is happening?
Well, there's the duplicity of it, right? Fear of the unknown or excitement and curiosity. Like that's the mindset. Like that's where we are. And you got to think about it. If we are in a major shift, and I can't imagine anybody doesn't think we're not in a major shift. We're in a major shift and it's happening globally. So look at your life and where are you being asked to shift? What are you being asked to let go of? When you think about the shift, there's the demolishing of the old, but there's also the building of the new. And I think what you're doing is like, I'm going to put my energy on building something new, which is a new experience of understanding life and death as a soul and the continuum, the continuum. That's what you're exploring. That's what you're pioneering. And you doing it gives moms permission. You understand? Like seriously, when I say permission, and I don't know how you experienced it, if you got resistance from the family or the friends, but I know I gave you something this morning that I was recently told I was doing the devil's work, by somebody's partner after they were completely shifted by an experience, like really got it and changed from like totally fear based and angry and in deep grief to a place of acceptance and willingness to go forward. And that happens a lot, a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but a lot of moms will show up not wanting to live anymore. I won't say wanting to take their lives, but not wanting to live anymore after the child leaves. And the connection does create that point of hope that, oh, it's not that you're just a memory anymore. There is something more, and we get to explore it, right? And so you and Kira, I want to say something. You're really cool in your awareness that she shifts, that she expands. The way that you said that she's not the 15-year-old personality all the time anymore. Because I remember when I met Sally, and my girlfriend had lost her son, and Sally said, he channeled through Sally, picture me as an adult, a 6 foot something tall man, see that image and break it down like a jigsaw puzzle, a thousand pieces, and imagine taking one piece out of it. And that's my life as Stephen, as your son. And then when I passed, that piece of me was going back into all of me. And so to come through and still be that child at that age, I have to like bring myself into a small, like compartmentalize or confine or contain all of this vastness that I am, so I could speak to you like a little boy, right? So Kara was like, she just was like, I'm not even gonna placate your desire to hear me like that. Let me show you who I really am, And I feel like you unzip the human suit and then everything expands. And so she's like, well, if I'm, and it happens, no matter what, when your child or your mom passes, you change. And I'll say that because a lot of people who lose their moms don't realize it. The foundation of who they are is now evolved, right? So it automatically shifts who you are able to become. So that's where, like your mom or your child goes into spirit and they take a piece of you with you. So all of a sudden you're more expansive. You can live true to the expanse, or you can box yourself back into the idea that I will be in grief for the rest of my life and they are just going to be a memory on the shelf. So it's hard work, but it's life changing and it's world altering. I truly believe that. I think now, is it Pandora's box? You can't put the stuff back in it. Like, there's no going back. There's enough people now that get it, and it makes me laugh when people say, I don't know if I believe in that stuff." Like 20 years of doing this on a regular basis. There's no doubt it's my life. It's an everyday experience. So I can't fathom just dismissing it as I don't believe that. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable to me that that's still even an option. But I
Yeah,
don't think.
because everybody's at their own spot with it, and I have experienced what you're speaking of a pushback, which is hard, and as a mother, like, where, like, let's say, for example, people that as I speak more and more about the Galactic Federation of Light, or because that's what is, that's what I'm hearing, is that that's where Kier sits. Like, I don't even know what that is at the time, but I'm speaking pretty publicly about these things. And even just that I am connecting directly to my child. I'm not religious, I never
Mhm,
was, but
mhm.
what I'm also simultaneously witnessing is a increase of fundamentalist ideas, going back, like this Christ consciousness, maybe I'll call it, with people that I know, which is that's okay. That my connection to Kira, that it's not okay, that even people will comment on my social media posts when I do a really beautiful, it's coming through
Inspired.
me, and
Mhm.
that people might comment like, God is doing this, God, wanting to bring it back to God, instead of using Kira as the person that is, or the soul that is guiding me. And I really just have to let it go, because sure, we're all God. That's, at least that's my experience. But I promise you, for Becky Bradley, God was not going to bring me back from the brinks. It had to be my child.
Right.
So, uh, if anybody, I always say, like, and I really try not to judge that, this system that would fear, that would tell a mother that her connection to her child is the devil's work. I can have chills in my body right now. Like, I try not to get upset about it, because the mother, the human, the ego in me wants to say, I hope your child never dies. I
Yeah.
hope that never happens to you, because that is when you start to question everything. And thankfully, I did not have that belief system that I had to get over.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that. But and I have so much compassion for any mothers that have that belief system being put on them, because it makes it even
Yeah.
harder to listen. But your love for your child, and the truth of what's happening here, is bigger than anyone's ideas. that, like you said, that are really from a man-made system that is meant to control. And I actually don't usually like say these things because I'm trying to be feel good always on here and I'm not trying to
Right.
like point fingers, but there's a reason that I'm saying it like this. Or if there's anyone that's listening, that if your belief system causes people to question your connection with your child, please listen to yourself. That's all I'm saying. And those people that are putting it on you, yeah. So have they lost a child? And I also hate saying lost a child because you
Right.
can't lose something.
Right.
I hate the word
Right.
child lost,
Right.
those
Ex
words, but I
Yeah.
use them because that's how people find me. We can't lose our children. You can't. We're connected infinitely to everything and everyone, but specifically that can never be broken. But these are just words. So anyways, there's my
I think
little
I have to tell you something really funny. When I started working with the pendulum, one letter at a time, right? My f one of I must have been I think it might have been my first, but it was one of my very first things that I spelled out. "You found dad." So you know how everybody said, sorry for your loss," is like, "You found dad,"
yeah,
like, you thought you lost me, but you found me. Yeah, so it was just a
yeah.
play on words that I always remember. But I wanna just mention, I'm not as polite as you about the thing. I think there's a difference between people who live Jesus's truth and Christians in the current, extreme religious, expression of Christianity. I think there is, something to look at where what the church represents takes us far from our truth. I think the idea of making God a man sent us out of balance. I think the divine is more than one man outside of me telling me what I should or shouldn't do and judging me accordingly. No, I think we are all one. And I think man made that institution to govern humanity and to keep women in their place so we didn't realize our true power. I don't think it's coincidence that the wars in the Middle East where all of these man-made religions were born. I mean, look at what's happening at the birthplace of religion, of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. It's constantly at war because the concepts keep us at war with our own truth. So until
Yes.
we make peace in ourselves with our divinity, we will continue to create a world at war. It all starts with us. It all starts with us recognizing our divine, not an understanding of it. So, that's the thing that you challenge with people when you do what you do. You don't fit into the box that makes them comfortable believing that what they believe is okay, is enough. You make them challenge it, and they don't want to challenge it. And there's enough people that believe the way they believe to think you're the crazy.
And I'm just shrugging my shoulders because think what you want.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it's a challenge.
well,
I've one of my favorite moms, she fought me tooth and nail, and she just kept coming back, like real strong-willed mind. And I find that the really intelligent ones that are very defined by their intelligence have a hard time letting go of some of the programs. But she felt it, and her daughter is just like, if I was in spirit, that's what I would be like, just like you like, I'm not letting this, you can't just put me on the shelf. So she has come back and she keeps coming back, and her daughter blows us away and makes her look at every thought that keeps her from connecting. She's so powerful. So a couple of years go by and she's shifted. She's completely different. And her friends who say to her, like, how, maybe I think it was around the holidays, they're like, how are you holding it together? You seem so strong. And she's like, well, it's working with Laura, it's connecting with my daughter, it's the faith, it's the signs, and they literally turned around and said, you need to stop that. You can't do that. You need to leave her alone so she could go do what she needs to do. And I was like, "Oh my god, can you imagine?" Like, I couldn't even fathom that. They were saying how great she's doing, how positive she feels, how healthy she seems. And then they say, "You need to stop that," because their religion told them.
yes. And
So, I just wanna say one
I,
last thing. So
yeah.
it's taking the divine out of the ideas into an experience. That's what you're doing. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do. The divine has been contained in religious concepts for generations, for too long. Sorry, that's where I
No,
am
I
with
love it. And I'm always learning Laura, your divine timing of you being on here, showing me something too, because I'm like, only love is real, only feel good always. But there is the part of me that's like also like everything that you're saying, people would say, well, is Kira stuck? Like, why is she talking to her?
No,
And I would just let it go. I do a lot of letting go because I
fear.
can't be attached to how you are having my experience. And what I really want to just say is that there's so many beautiful humans that are finding me, whether it's this podcast, in my yoga community, literally at the bookstore. He's probably listening. Like, we find each other and we're waking up and to really just continuously question any system that especially tells you that your connection to your child is not real, but anything that makes you feel fearful
Mhm,
that you might go to hell, all of these things, that we listen to ourselves and that we just continue to trust and know that things are happening and things are shifting. And yeah, sometimes there's some anger around it and that needs to happen. And the power that I'm watching with specifically women, and there's like a handful of men that are, and I'm so grateful to them. My husband is just a very open, soft-hearted man. He's not as connected as me, like, but he's open to it, which, yeah, when
mhm.
your child dies, it
Yeah,
opens you.
yeah.
That we do it through feeling all of that. And all of the work that you've done for the last 2 decades, this is your work, that you were there for me to feel the spiritual truth that was coming through you, and that I'm sure you're showing up in my field again so that I will maybe do more work with the channeling. All I do is what I get called to do next. But this podcast isn't to convince anybody of anything. If you're listening, I imagine already very much believing. Otherwise, I don't think you'd be listening to Laura and I.
Right.
But yeah, to continue to know that it is done, that we are doing it, and that nothing's going to stop us now, right? That Starship song, which Kira played for me as a sign. And when I introduced my podcast for the first time, that was the song I used. They can call us crazy, but nothing's going to stop us now because it is in motion. And we are calling this timeline in that all of these belief systems are being shattered or watching it. And
Mhm, mhm,
when you crush humanity, like kind of what's happened, all of these, when people get in enough pain, the ego dissolves and they're
mhm.
willing to look at things differently. And so it's a beautiful experience, right?
It
I mean,
is.
I'm having a pretty good time.
It is. It is. It's hard and soulfully rewarding. That's the way I'll say it. In a way, nothing else is. Nothing physical, no material thing is going to bring you that same feeling of oneness. Like, whoa, when you touch in on it, it takes you over. It takes you over. These kids have a mission and they have somebody like you that's willing to walk the earth with it, and that
Yeah.
is, like I said, it's a real thing. How many old souls in spirit don't have that mom that's willing to not care what other people think. That is everything. It's
Yeah.
so powerful.
Can you share just really quickly, like, because you do so much, so you share these channelings. So tell me what you do.
The way that I explain it now is I see it like when there's a field that we're all tapping into, and people will go to a psychic, they'll go to a medium or a channel. And I think it's that we're tapping in on different levels of consciousness to reach people that are living in different levels of consciousness, right? So you go to a psychic and they tap into the field and they tell you something, and then it happens. And your mind, your ego mind is like, whoa, wait a minute. How does that person know? They tapped into something and it happened. There's something more than just this. Then you go to a medium, and a medium then brings in your loved one from that same field and tells you stuff that means something to you and it's relevant now. So it's now your mind is saying, well, there's something more. And we go there when we pass because they know something about me now. So they're not just a memory. There's some place we're going and we're going to continue, right? So now your mind is blown open a little bit more. So with the channeling with Sally, just the way that level of consciousness that she tapped into was like no ego. This is soul to soul communication. And so that's all I knew. That's all I learned. I didn't know anything else. So when I open up, it is where I'm not in the middle. Like a medium will say, I see flowers and they remind me of grandma. Do you have a grandma in spirit? Or something like that. Where with me, I am getting out of the way. So you imagine that I see a door open in my head and I step out and I'm in the field. And the field looks like the night sky. And your name brings me to your constellation in the sky. And all of those points are potentials of you. So I'll ask people who's in spirit, right? So their name, when they passed, how old they are. Usually 3 pieces of information brings me right to that point of light, the potentials of your experience with that soul. And so then I'm getting out of the way, and that soul is going to come through me because we're all light. So my light says, invites them in. I'm with you, and that they're tapping into your field. Okay. So when I channel, that insight can come from a loved one in spirit, but it can come from a guide perspective. It can come from, guides that are non physical beings, like an entity. And it could come from somebody, like an archangel, like Archangel Michael, or it could come from like Edgar Casey. So I'm not limited where I'm not like one of those channels that only channels like Lee Carroll channels Cryon, or Esther Hicks with Abraham. With Sally, there was no holds barred. She just would channel everybody and anybody. And so that's how I learned. And then I started learning about Lee Carroll and Seth and Jane Robertson. I'd be like, whoa, I didn't even know that world existed. But when I channel, so that insight, and this is what the cool thing is, that point of potential, that insight can come through you and that person that we're channeling, whatever the relationship is, can come through the perspective of that soul and spirit, your ancestors that could give you even more insight on what you can benefit from learning now, or your higher self. So you're not contained in your body. An aspect of you is energy beyond the physical. So that is the energy of awareness. The energy of awareness is the field. The energy of awareness is the divine. So we're all the energy of awareness. How much of that we let in is defined by what we think, what we believe, right? So when you have these channels, it reminds your mind what you already know. So it kind of aligns your mind with this divine knowing. And so the more people listen to the channels, the more they're blowing the divine energy through those channels and opening up their channels. So the ones that listen regularly and come back, I definitely see the long-term benefit where now they're getting their stuff so clearly, and each channel helps them move a different area of resistance. Not that they come and say, well, this is my situation. Sometimes they do. And sometimes spirit will say, okay, that's cool, but you also need to know this. And we don't know that. And my platform is always highest good, giving it over to spirit. They know so much more of what we need. Have a situation where one person having an issue with a relationship and they want to hear from that person's higher self. And I give it to spirit. I ask for that higher self, but spirit will come in and a guide will say, well, blah, 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 blah. And then grandma will come in and say, well, don't forget blah, 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 blah. And then that soul's higher self come in when the mind is already now ready to receive it with all the other awareness. So the flow, I'm not in control of it, but it is, I know I could step in. And that's another thing about doing this. It's crazy. I get prompted to do these series and classes, and I am told, show up. I don't get the curriculum. So I have to ask people to come join my class. And they're like, well, what are you going to learn? I don't know. I don't know who's going to teach
Yes.
it. I don't know what it's going to be. But boy, when I finally did it, and it took me a while to jump off that ledge. And thank God I have people who get it. And they're like, all right, let's go in with you and see what happens. And we do. And the most amazing souls have come through. And they're often the ones that lived purpose, because then you can align with their experience of living purpose. So people like Edgar Casey will come through. I think I channeled Sylvia Brown once. I've channeled St. Francis. You channeled Da Vinci. Oh my God, that's cool because, he was inspired. And it wasn't like he was defining it. He was like, oh, I'll go in this direction. Oh, I'll go in that direction because he was inspired. Right. So anyway, so that's what I feel. I feel like I'm at that point now where I'm blown open. So anybody that works with me will be blown open. And then they have to deal with what shows up in life. And that's the key. It's not like you come to one of my classes and you get a curriculum, you get to go home and study and read it if you want. That energy now came through me, through you. It's going to go out into your world and it's going to show you all the places where the resistance is. And that could be with your family dynamic. If they're really religious and they don't believe this, they could be the conflict that you have to resolve before you expand more. I
Mm.
don't know. But let me tell you how many people after doing the groups, all of a sudden they're like, oh, they're getting divorced. Oh, they moved to a different state, or that, life. If you say, I want to live my purpose, life responds because it's all one. So that's everything is about your belief and your willingness. When you say, I want to live more of my soul, But you can bet every soul is itching to be set free right now. That's what it's about. And that's why they're trying to keep us back into the old days. I mean,
I love that. I love all of that so much. And I've listened to your channelings. Obviously, I listen to it, and that they are. It's spiritual truth. And if you're moving people into this frequency, as we, yeah, like I almost like used to think about, it's like a brainwashing for me. Nothing wrong with a clean brain. Like I have to and it's not brainwashing in a bad way. It's just like continuing to be fed this information that changes what my belief system. And like, guess what? I'm always like, even if I was crazy and delusional, this feels a lot better. Like, let me be. And I know I'm not. I'm having my
it's
own
great.
experience,
It's
but
true.
yeah, it's like,
It's true.
okay, like you said, like why would you not want this? And your
Oh, I think I
classes
got
are a great
frozen.
way for people
Or you got
to, become part of that. And I do think grief leads you to seek things like that more than if you're just like in the day to day. And like I'd love to go back to sleep. I'd love to go back to the life I was living
oh
where
yeah.
my daughter was coming home every day. But that's not my reality anymore. And so it did have me seeking, it has me sitting here with you, and it's just a different experience, understanding that she still exists through this conversation. And I'm often in awe of the things that I say and do, but it's everything that you're saying. We're just like these tiny, just a tiny piece of us, and we're being expanded to have more of us be able to, an awareness in these human bodies of just how expansive we are, and that we can have merged consciousness with other people. And I mean, that's what I experience, a lot of like simultaneous, like just knowing with someone else. And it's speeding up and happening to so many people. And it's a wild time to be alive. And if my child did have to die, which is what did have to happen, I'm so grateful that I get to be on the forefront of the Great Awakening.
Mhm.
I get to be. And that makes sense. That's actually the only thing that makes sense in this. Most people are listening. You are forerunners, pioneers. You wouldn't be listening if wasn't what we were doing here. And so, we're almost out of time, and I just appreciate you so much. I really just want to. Do you teach channeling? Do you teach what you do, or you mostly just channel for other people?
So, that's been an issue. That's been an issue. I did some pendulum classes and I found that if you send somebody off with a pendulum, they haven't cleared enough
Yeah,
of their fears and doubts and insecurities yet, it affects the experience and maybe distorts what's coming through because you are the filter, right? So you really got to clear it. So I'm thinking of how to approach that going forward. The course, the classes that I teach, everyone that you sit in helps open your channel. Everyone is making you face. And that's for me, I can teach you how to work with a pendulum. I could teach you how to use angel cards. You know what I'm saying? I could teach you about crystals and all of that. But like, it's really going to be how you walk the earth, right? Am I always going to come home and pick up my pendulum when something's going on? No, when I'm out in the world, I'm going to know that my gut is telling me my truth. So I
yeah,
feel like all of that stuff is all to get you to realize we're already in the awareness. We are the awareness. You understand? So when our inclination is to move forward, that's the awareness pushing. When our inclination is to pull back, it's the awareness saying that's not for us. And if we could just leave it that simple, we can live it. Teaching, specifically teaching channeling, I have not done that in a couple of years. I feel like the other stuff has taken precedent, and I'm currently doing the 6-week series that I was not prepared for. You know how you say you don't know what you're going to do next? This was not a plan, but I was prompted one day. I was like, okay, I'll do it just like that. 6 weeks, I'm going to channel insight for people and they're going to ask questions. And people would send me, are we stepping into World War III? Ask about the Epstein files. They're asking about aliens. Like I am channeling, and it's so we're 4 weeks in, and it's profound. It's the next level of understanding that they're bringing in that we're able to take in. So it's helping shift people from fear to hope,
I
and
love that.
everything comes from that. So I don't teach specifically like that. I help people open to their connections and whatever that does for them. Then I can take people individually in different directions or they can go and do their thing. Some people will go into Reiki, come back 6 months later and be like, whoa, because in this, I said it before and I want to say it. I've taken like a dozen different levels of Reiki just because every time I do, it blows my channel open anymore. It's nothing to do with teaching it or doing it. It is all about the healing that it does between the body and the soul, between the mind and the soul, and between the body, mind, soul, and the divine. Like, I really feel like Reiki in and of itself, everybody needs it, can use it on a regular daily basis just to calm the self and bring the divine back fully present. That's my own proclivity. Everybody has to find their own way, but if you wanna channel, if you wanna open your connection, Reiki's a really great path. Over the course of the years, keep going, and you keep getting stronger connections. And it requires surrender, which is exactly what you need to do in all of this.
Yes, actually, that's all of it, the surrender. And I got trained in Reiki, same thing. Not because I was going to go out and be a Reiki practitioner, but because it got sent to me. It was, we just keep getting shown what to do next now. And Reiki, actually, after Kira died, was one of the main things that helped me really calm my nervous system.
Yep,
And
yep,
I would go like twice a week. And it was amazing. It was like that first energy that I was like, wait, something's going on here, because someone could literally fill my body up with energy through their hands, that I could have a moment of peace. But I'm not actually actively doing Reiki with other people. But like you said, it did open up my channels. So, uh,
if I could define a protocol, that would be it. When somebody loses somebody, that they go at least twice a week for Reiki for the first couple of weeks to calm the nervous system and calm the mind, and then realize the connection like that. It
yeah,
facilitates that. It really, but I mean, that really is the next level. That's the world the women are gonna create. One that actually
I,
nurtures the soul.
that's a great idea. Yeah, that is a great idea. I mean, that's just what I naturally ended up doing because it found
That
me. Everybody was recommending it to me, but yeah, I never had done it before, and so that was really amazing. So I'm going to ask you, would you be willing to do a channel on here?
yeah.
So what I want to do is we're going to end this episode. And if anybody, the next episode, which will be a much shorter episode that will air after this, will be her channeling. So, and it'll just sit on its own because I want people to hear what we're talking about. So tune into the next episode. But I want to end this one. I want to ask you two questions. One, you've given so many different ways that people can find peace, that people can connect. If you have anything else that you want to say about that, because we really are moving into like, how do we feel good always? How do we find this energy? So if you have anything to say in addition to all the amazing wisdom that you have already given, you could say that. And then what it means to you, this feel good always.
Okay, so the 2 things I would add are nature. We're living in the concrete jungle, and when we feel disconnected, it really means we're disconnected, and going to nature connects you. If you can, even if you can't get outside, look at a tree, look at the window. I have been following FOBBV, Friends of Big Bear Valley. It's a webcam for eagles, and I've done it for years, and I've watched these beautiful eagles raise their sit on their eggs until they're born and raise the hatch. It's a great way. And in the middle of the chaos in the news, I'll shut off the news and I'll watch that and just watch how perfect they treat each other. Watch how simple life could be. These are eagles. I mean, they soar above everything else, and they are so respectful to each other, and they just do what they have to do and live. It's really, they simplify it and it's beautiful. The other thing, powerful tool is heart math. Is one of the things I was trained in. Now, more than ever, I realize the benefit of it. I've studied every different form of meditation there is. I can go up and out and hang out with Buddha. I can om out, but heart math's different. Heart math asks you to focus in your heart as if you're breathing in and out of your heart. So you're bringing your focus from your brain to your heart, and you're balancing your breath and sitting in a place of appreciation. Doing that 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes in the morning and at night, you start to create that alignment. They call it a coherent state where the brain and the divine, or the brain and the heart, are connected, right? And s- Heart Math is an institute, a research institute. They studied prayer and meditation and the effects of it. They did it all to be like practical. They're really scientists. And, after doing it, everybody they were working with was getting more intuitive. They couldn't deny it. So they now, they teach it as practical intuition, that there's a real way that when the brain gets synced with the heart, we know more. So they study the field. It's all there. So that's the simplest thing you can do. You can do it anywhere. You don't have to sit in any position with any hand position. You could be anywhere, and you could take your focus from here to here. Breathe deep for a few deep breaths and sync up. And you could do it all day, every day, and they do. There's monitors that give you feedback on where you are, and you can actually see that you're in a coherent state. So the little mind, the thinking mind, has actually something to say, oh, there's a value in doing this, you know? So I find heart math to be really important right now if people want to stay connected in balance and in their power. And it really does shift the autonomic nervous system. The happy, the feel good, be happy. I think for me, it's the soul perspective. When something breaks us, I gotta say the souls get excited. There's an excitement that they get to come through. So maybe the little mind ego might not be so happy, but the soul is thriving. And so if you can remember that in the midst of the uncertain times, the fearful times, or the grief moments, that's what shifts the experience. And for you, that's what you do. When it happens and you feel the feelings, you remember she's actually still a part of your experience. And that instantly syncs you up to that experience, to that level of consciousness or frequency of being of you and her as one.
It's so beautiful. I'm so grateful. I do want to add one more thing because you just said a sign and a connection when you talked about Jackie and Shadow at Big
So,
Bear. We
yeah.
went there a year before Kira died, and there's an inside joke because my daughter-in-law Abby, who's been on this podcast before, is very connected to birds, and that's what Kira sends her signs through is birds. And she was obsessed with Jackie and Shadow. Not very many people knew about Jackie and Shadow back in like 2022, so we all laughed when Jackie and Shadow went famous right after
I
Kira
know.
died. I'm like, of course, it's like she's trolling Abby because Abby bought a Jackie and Shadow shirt. And Kira was like, really? Another bird shirt? While she was alive, she said these things. And so do you have
That's the
Jackie and Shadow?
kind of
Okay, yeah. So I feel like
I'm
Abby will
obsessed.
be so happy. She's just obsessed with them. And then, yes, right after Kira died, maybe like 6 months later was when they kind of went viral. And we were like, of course, Jackie and Shadow are going viral because that's just, and those are the things you look for that like everything is connected
Yeah.
and that, is it cure? Is it everything? Is it our field that we can look at them going viral and it's not
It
just a
wouldn't mean
memory
the
that
same
it's
for anybody else. That's the key. You know, these situations that happen are so unique to the people. You know, the different
yes.
moms that I work with. That's what, like when you start to talk to other moms, you realize how that means something to you, specific.
Yes. And that's what matters is what it means to you. So thank you so much, Laura. The next podcast after this, we'll go ahead and share channelings from you. If you haven't followed the podcast, please do so. Subscribe, comment down below if you're on YouTube. I really want to thank you so much. I will put all of your information down in the show notes, including I'll put a link to Heart Math for people to look at. And
Cool.
thank you for the work that you're doing, that you've done for decades, for listening and for like just fiercely doing what you're being asked to do. Because, like you said, we all have our parts. And I love and I appreciate that you're there, that you're playing your part for the greater good, for the highest good. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And until next time.